Monday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. ESPN's national NFL analyst Jeremy Fowler with what he expects relative to the Browns quarterback competition to start training camp.
Here's how this is going to go down. The first week or two of training camp, I expect the Browns to run it similarly to the spring, OTAs and minicamp, where all four quarterbacks, the two rookies, Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, trading blows, getting a lot of different throws, working on opposite fields, first team, second team, third team. You're going to see all that. And then Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, will crystallize the pecking order. I do expect Joe Flacco to be in the mix there. He's certainly the incumbent, probably the favorite at this point. And Shedeur Sanders did impress in the spring. Like, he was willing to throw the ball in tight windows. He was accurate. But when you ask people with Cleveland, they do bring some caution there. We're like, look, he was working against the third team a lot, not much of a pass rush. He's got a ways to go, and so that will probably show early on in camp.
And camp underway. We'll get the first media availability coming up Wednesday. Browns beat reporter Daryl Ryder, his read of the Browns quarterback competition.
Number one, I don't believe it's a four-man quarterback competition. Okay. But to be factually accurate and communicating to their fans, I have to continue to say that it is. And then also, too, I don't see a long-term solution here. I feel like it's a four-man quarterback competition for the Band-Aid. You know, we're not competing for the franchise guy here. It's just to get through the 17-game schedule or get through the first 6 games and then reassess when you get back from London or something like that. So no, I'm not excited about it. I don't think that it's going to be what everyone is expecting it to be, just based on how they have worked it so far.
You think they're sort of setting it up for a certain outcome?
Yeah, I do.
I don't want to say rigging it, but I think it is kind of they're playing it a certain way where
I think they have an outcome in their mind.
Yeah.
And so, but they're going to give everybody an equal opportunity. I'm not going to say that they're rigging it or they're tilting the scales, but I feel like they're going to put guys in position to just validate or
how they
give them hey, let's not do this because it's not going to work. I don't feel like this is a true, honest to goodness four-man competition, especially because I don't think you can do a true, honest to goodness four-man competition.
And that's probably very valid relative to how much practice time you can have on the field. But if they went into it without an idea of how these guys would play out, they'd be getting ripped because they don't have any idea what they have. So, yeah, they have an idea. Yeah, they're going to give them the opportunity to prove them correct or prove them wrong. That's kind of what a quarterback competition is. Tony Grossi on the potential quarterback order as the Browns enter training camp coming up Wednesday.
Give me the 1, 2, 3, 4 order right now for quarterbacks.
I really believe it's Flacco 1, Pickett 2, and Gabriel 3.
For practice on Wednesday?
Yes.
Wow. I think it's Pickett.
It doesn't matter how they start out on Wednesday. It truly doesn't. They'll go and we'll see how it plays out. The thing I still want to see Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel in pads. We haven't seen that. Until we see him in pads, nothing matters. It's gym class. Some news from around the NFL. The Seattle Seahawks have released Noah Fant, who at pretty productive tight end. Didn't have a great year last year. Has been battling some injuries, but Noah Fant released by the Seattle Seahawks. So a veteran tight end becomes available. Turn our attention to the Guardians. Trying to make it 2 out of 3 over the Athletics at Progress Field to start the second half of the season. Gavin Williams was on the mound for the Guardians. Jeffrey Springs for the Athletics. And Gavin Williams was dialed in. Gavin Williams had the fastball going up high, had the sinker going down low. Williams, 11 strikeouts, pitched 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned, 1 walk, and 11 strikeouts. Guardians gave him the lead early in the game. First inning, David Fry, RBI to left field. That made it 1-0. Guardians took the early lead, and Williams pretty much made sure it stood up. In the second, Austin Hedges. Yeah, an Austin Hedges RBI sighting. down the left field line. It goes as an RBI single as Hedges has to get back to first. Fourth inning, still 2-0. David Fry again paints the line in left. This one will be a bases-clearing double. 3-run score, 5-0 Guardians with the lead. In the seventh inning, 5-1, Angel Martinez continues to hit the ball really well. That one's not coming back. That is a solo home run to right center to make it 6-1. Eighth inning, Angel Martinez again, an RBI single that pushes it to 8-2. Gavin Williams was dominant in his start. The Guardians do make it 2 out of 3 against the Athletics.
I think it just comes down to pounding the zone and not being too fine between each pitch. I know I felt like I was nibbling, especially against Chicago. I was nibbling way too much and trying to hit the outer half when I can just throw it in the zone and just, give up weak contact would be way better than a walk. With the sinker, they pound the ball into the ground. They're bad at hitting sinkers. I hate to say it that way, but just needed to mix it in there a lot more. I know there's a couple guys that couldn't throw it to them, but other than that, just mixed the whole game, which is good.
Pounded the zone right after guys with 11 punch outs, 1 walk. But I thought he was in good counts majority of the day. Just gave us everything we needed today, and offense provided a little cushion. It was just a great all-around day, but Gavin was special.
You can't put pressure on a guy. You can't speed up the process. But with David Fry, just today is one of those days, this weekend really, just left-handed starters, that just show the difference a guy like that can make in that lineup.
Yeah, no doubt. David Fry is one of our best hitters. We know that. And sometimes getting that 4-day break to kind of relax and take a breather and come back ready to rock, and then 2 lefties right out of the gate, that can get you going. So great weekend for David, Angel, everybody. It was just a great offensive weekend.
Guardians still 4.5 out of that third and final wild card spot. There are 4 teams in front of them for the third and final AL wild card spot. They open up a 4-game series against the Baltimore Orioles at Progressive Field a little bit later tonight. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com, leads us off. We're talking Browns.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue on Sports4CLE. Judy Batista from NFL Network on the Browns quarterback situation and what she thinks might happen.
If we believe the language that they use going back to the spring, they're going to value processing time, decision making, that kind of thing. They want somebody who's going to be able to run the offense, minimize mistakes, make good decisions, things like that. They use those words a lot, processing speed and decision making, when they talked about Dillon Gabriel, especially in the spring. Don't forget, he has a whole lot of experience from college football, 6 years worth. So they were impressed with his processing speed to the point where they said, like, in the spring, they were putting more on his plate than they initially thought they were going to do for him. They kept giving him more information because he was absorbing it so much. Now, of course, when you look at Joe Flacco, there's no question they know how he processes things and how he runs the offense because he's already done it. They went to a playoff with Joe Flacco. So the spring was mostly about just putting Joe Flacco to the side, getting Kenny Pickett up to speed on this offense, which he has not played in before, and then getting the rookies going. But if you're looking at the quarterback competition, it's really two quarterback competitions, the competition between the two rookies and then the competition between the two veterans. Certainly, I think at this early point, you would say Joe Flacco has to have the edge just because he's been there and won there. And then I think you keep an eye on Dillon Gabriel, who I think caught some eyes in the spring with how quickly he was absorbing information.
Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Scott, we've heard a lot about the quarterbacks. We'll finally get to see him on Wednesday. You took us through, you wrote an article with some scenarios. Take us through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Joe Flacco emerges as the week 1 starter. I don't think it's guaranteed that that's going to happen. I think Kenny Pickett takes the first snap on Wednesday. And I know you said that doesn't really matter, but I do think it at least gives you a jumping off point for this stage of the competition. So, let's assume Pickett takes that first snap. Then I don't know if it's his job to lose, but I do think he would probably have to stumble for Joe Flacco to pass him as a starter, just because Pickett's 27 and former first-round pick, and I think the Browns believe that there's a chance he could be their long-term solution at that position where, Joe's 40, and that's really not possible. But I think you need to see more from Kenny Pickett. The Browns need to see more from Pickett than what he showed in the spring. I know when I was watching him, I wasn't wowed by what he did, and that doesn't mean in the meeting rooms and he's not making all the right decisions, but just didn't see a lot of splash plays, and that's kind of been, his history in the league. There's, he's 15-10, but only thrown for 300 yards once, only thrown for, I guess, more than one touchdown once in his career. And then you switch to the rookies, and to me, it starts with Dillon Gabriel. Obviously, he was picked 2 rounds before. Shedeur Sanders was. The Browns like him. Judy was talking about the processing speed. He's got a lot of time in college, 6 years, threw for a ton of yards, ton of touchdowns. The question is, I don't think right away the question is, can he be ready week 1 to be the starter? I think the question is, can he be ready week 1 to be the number 2? If not, then you probably have to keep all 4 quarterbacks. And I think it's going to be a difficult decision for Andrew Berry. And then you go to Shedeur Sanders, who I thought looked the best in the spring of all 4 quarterbacks. Now, the circumstances were different for Shedeur. He didn't get any work with the ones. He didn't go against the number 1 defense. He spent a lot of time on that second field when they were doing simultaneous drills, a lot of time in the red zone, which padded his quote-unquote stats. But I was impressed by him, and I do think he closed the gap to whatever extent on Gabriel. I still think there is a gap there. I think it's a long shot for Sanders to emerge as a week 1 starter. But if he continues to throw it really well, and that carries over to joint practices and it carries over the preseason, who knows?
Well, there's also some news relative to quarterbacks around the league today, as the Titans announced that Will Levis, who was battling Cam Ward, will undergo season-ending shoulder surgery. So it looks like Cam Ward's going to be the starter there. Browns have talked, there's been Browns talk about, well, wait till a quarterback goes down. And so right now, there's one, and we haven't even started in pads. If things don't play out with Kenny Pickett, could you see that being a destination for him?
I could. I don't think there's any rush to that, right? I think the Browns want to let their 4-man competition play out before they make that kind of decision. But yeah, if you look around the league, Tennessee does not have a whole lot behind Cam Ward now. So I think Tennessee will spend the next month and a week until cutdown day going, okay, how can we improve our number 2 quarterback situation? And could Kenny Pickett be the best option? Maybe. Would the Browns be willing to give him up, right? Depends if he wins the job. Then would Joe Flacco be a good guy to have around Cam Ward? So I think that is certainly a possibility. I just don't think we're going to have any resolution for that for a while.
Now, I know you wrote an article, five players to watch in training camp, number of training camp previews. Take us through the guys that are intriguing for that.
Yeah, DeJuan Jones is Quinshon Judkins, right? Because we don't know how that's going to affect the team. We don't know how long he's going to be out, if he's going to be out with the suspension. Isn't in camp yet because he's not signed, working through all the legal troubles. So that's the biggest one. And he was going to be on the list regardless, because if he's hadn't been arrested and wasn't going through this, it was, okay, can he be the week 1 starter in an offense that wants to recommit to the run game? So he's an important piece. If he was here, if he's not here, then it's how do you replace that important piece? And, then it's more Jerome Ford, more Dylan Sampson, I would assume. So you got Judkins, you got DeJuan Jones. I fully expect him to be the left tackle. That's how it's been shaping up. I don't think the Browns, there's any kind of competition there. It's just a matter of, number one, does he stay healthy? Is he still in as good a shape as he was in the offseason? Can he continue on that trend, which is a good trend for him? And then how does he handle the switch to left tackle? Because I know he did it for a little bit last year, but that was a big transition for him. And when we talked to him in the spring, he's still making that transition. And, it's easier for some guys. It's harder for some guys. He's still working through that process. So he's got to get up to speed, got to get comfortable on that left side. And you have the 4 other pieces on that line are set, and he's the other guy. And he's the young one. And the Browns need to figure out who their future left tackle is. And it would be so much easier for them organizationally if he's the guy. Ronnie Hickman is another one I think bears watching. Similar to Jones in that the guy who's in front of him is gone. And for Jones, it was Jedrick Wills Jr. And for Hickman, it was Juan Thornhill. Browns signed him a couple years ago. Disappointing 2 years to the Browns. A lot of injuries affected that, but also didn't have the splash plays that you expected from Juan Thornhill. So now it's Ronnie Hickman's job. Now they have some competition at safety. They brought in a couple of veterans, Rayshon Jenkins and DeMonte Casey. But I think they expect Hickman to win the job. And, if you're trying to compete and going through a roster transition where you're trying to get younger and cheaper, you need those young guys on your roster to take that big step. That counts for Jones, it counts for Hickman, and I think there's other guys on the roster that applies to.
Yeah, without question. And you had Dustin Hopkins, and don't need to explain that one. You got to
better make some kicks this year.
Got to make some kicks. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Don't listen very much to Cleveland media anymore. I'm tired of hearing about Shedeur Sanders all the time. Figured I'd call in today and ask a question. What do you think about the possibility of the Browns signing one of the fans, either Noah or George or both? Njoku's going to get hurt at some point. It's just a matter of when. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. So, Scott, we mentioned it earlier. Noah Fant, the tight end, was released by the Seahawks. George Fant's an offensive lineman. I think they have their veteran backup lineman. They're looking at young linemen. Fant intrigues me. Depends on what he wants money-wise.
Yeah, I think you're right about George Fant, the tackle that, Cornelius Lucas is that guy right now. If there's an injury to Conklin or Jones or Lucas in training camp, then George Fant could be on that short list of tackles. We saw saw the Browns go through a bunch the last couple of years, so you can never be. You have to have contingency plans. And then no offense, it's an interesting one because they have David Njoku's entering the last year of his contract. Does something get done there? It remains to be seen. I think he needs to prove something coming off an injury-plagued, disappointing season for him. I attribute a lot of that to injuries, but still, it wasn't. It was a step back after that Pro Bowl season in 2023. They draft Harold Fannin Jr., but if they're a team that's going to really rely on their tight ends, and that's what I expect, go back to the 2 and 3 tight end sets. Is Fant an upgrade? Sure. There's no doubt about that. You're right. It is about the money. It is about the opportunity. But I like the idea. I just don't know if he's a fit for what they're trying to do, big picture roster-wise.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Mike Renner from CBS Sports Pushing the Pile, talking about one of his top picks to win Defensive Rookie of the Year.
I'm going Mason Graham just because I think it's still a talent-based award. It's still – there were two guys I had pretty high evals on this defensive class, obviously Travis Hunter aside. It was Abdul Carter, Mason Graham. I thought they were kind of a clear – Carter a clear tier above Graham, but then Graham a clear tier above everyone else in terms of just that guy's going to be good. Is it year one? Obviously, DT is a very difficult position to translate to out the gate. We've seen it historically, just the physical nature of the position takes some getting used to. Basically, the strongest guy that you face in your college career ends up being your below average guy at the NFL level. So you just aren't, there's just a difference in terms of what you've seen versus what you're going to see. And strength isn't something like explosiveness where strength can be improved on all the way until your 30s, right? You can keep getting stronger. You can keep getting, adding more muscle to your frame throughout. Can't really add explosiveness, but you can keep getting stronger. And obviously in the NFL, guards, offensive linemen, centers, they do that. So Mason Graham, I'm not saying he's going to. Obviously, I think there's a reason Abdul Carter's odds-on favorite, but I just think he is very NFL ready, and that's why I'm taking him here.
Scott, normally I'd say, you're crazy. The defensive tackle isn't. If he can get 8-10 sacks from a defensive tackle position and the Browns defense plays like I think it might, I don't think it's out of the realm because I think Jim Schwartz usually has a stud defensive tackle, and it could be Mason Graham and it could be Malik Collins.
Yeah, I mean, those are the two keys for him to have a chance to win this award is there has to be the statistical production. And that shows up in sacks and forced fumbles, quarterback hits. That's where it has to show up. And then it needs to come on a defense, unless the Browns are great, but I don't think anybody's expecting that. So it would have to come on a defense that is really good. So a top 5 defense with Myles Garrett getting a bunch of attention and Mason Graham getting a bunch of attention. That's the scenario for this to be possible. And, the Browns think that he's going to be a different player than he was at Michigan because of the system and the way they're going to use him. And it's going to be, attack as opposed to reading and reacting. And they think they're going to unleash Mason Graham. And if that shows up in 8 or 10 sacks because Myles Garrett's getting double and triple teamed, then that's how it becomes possible. And that's what the Browns, I think it's fair to say, not only are hoping, but expecting. Maybe not as a rookie that he gets 8 or 10, but I think if you draft a guy at number 5 to be a pass rusher on the inside, that's what you're looking for production-wise.
I would agree wholeheartedly. Another one of the articles previewing camp that you wrote, 5 storylines to watch. First one, no hard feelings. Take us through that one.
Yeah. I just think it's going to be interesting, and maybe it's nothing. But Myles Garrett, when he had the really public trade request this offseason, I know it made some fans mad, and I don't think everything's been forgiven. So, how is he? What's the reaction, the reception on Friday during the first public training camp practice? I expect it to be great, and the people coming out to training camp practice love the Browns, so I don't know. I'm pretty sure they don't go there to boo or even to ignore Myles. And Myles has always loved the fans, has tried to cultivate a relationship, so I think he might even go out of his way. We've seen him, throw balls in the crowd during practice before. I could see him really trying to engage with the fans. But I'm just curious how that goes. And then if things start going poorly during the season, is that kind of the first thing that Browns fans go to? Will it be he asks for a trade? Like if he jumps offside, is that going to be the thing? I just think it's kind of hovering. And I'm not saying it should, because I think, Myles has put in a lot of time and has kind of a lot of collateral, a good will built up that maybe this should be let go. But I'm curious to see how that plays out.
4 for 1, the quarterback battle is another one.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to keep talking about it forever. It should be number 1, but I have a separate quarterback story we talked about, so I had to drop it to number 2. But I mean, that's going to get, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's going to be a high percentage of the conversation during camp.
Solid ground, and this one's intriguing. Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, if you just take a couple steps back and you go a little big picture, coming off 3-14, and I know that the Haslam's love Berry and Stefanski. They both got multi-year extensions before last season. The Haslam's went out of their way to take responsibility for the Deshaun Watson trade and contract, even saying that this might not be the best offseason to find your long-term quarterback. So there's a lot of reason to believe that the Haslam's want continuity. And I do believe that they want continuity and stability and want to keep Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. I also know that if they go 2-15 or 3-14 again, it's really hard to keep the guys at top when you have back-to-back disastrous years. So, I think nobody would benefit more than a 7-9 or 7-10 record or better than Berry and Stefanski, because I think then that's a no-brainer that they're coming back. But if the season starts poorly with, when it's possible with this difficult schedule, things start to go sideways, you're playing rookie quarterbacks, I think it's going to be important to keep an eye on that win total, whether it should be important or
not. So transition time, and this one's really intriguing because I think it's the reason that the national pundits are kind of killing the Browns roster. I saw one today where they're the second worst roster, which I find interesting. But they got a lot of young guys that they're counting on. Young guys are going to get an opportunity this year.
Well, yeah. I mean, we saw this was the first offseason where they really didn't make a bunch of splash free agent signings, a lot of big moves. I mean, even last year they traded for Jerry Jeudy. That was a big move. And you didn't see that this year, and it's because they don't have any salary cap room. And they're trying to recover from that. They didn't have the first-round draft picks for those 3 years because of the Deshaun Watson trade. So there's no doubt that this roster is in a transition. It needed to get younger. It needed to get cheaper. And I don't think that process is over, but they're right in the middle of it. And, I do think that's one of the reasons the Haslams might have some leniency. But, Andrew Berry is part of the reason the Browns got here in these spots. So, and his draft picks have been hit or miss. So this is a key year for the Browns to identify some of the young talent that you can say, okay, these are key core pieces. And I'm not sure they've done that enough. I don't think there's enough guys you go, yep, he's one. We talked about Jones. We talked about Hickman. You have the rookies, right? Mason Graham, who we mentioned. We don't know what's going on with Judkins, Carson Schlesinger. Like, if all of a sudden some of these guys from the last 2 or 3 draft classes prove to be, okay, this guy can be a long-term starter / key piece, I think the Browns will feel better about where they're going. But that makes everything about this year more difficult because there are question marks given the way the roster is compared to the way it has been.
And your last one, hold the line. This might be in my mind, if the offensive line bounces back and is league average or better, that's probably the biggest thing that would signal an increase in win total.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, or a good correlation to make there. And for a long time it was a given that the offensive line was the strength of the team, and I know that the line itself wants to be, and I know the Browns are counting on it to be one this year. But there's questions. I think it's next week. Ethan Posick turns 30. That means all 4 starters besides DeJuan Jones will be 30 plus and in the last year of their contracts. So we're going to see, we talk about transition, we're going to see it on the line to whatever degree. Is this Joe Bitonio's last year? Do the other 3 guys leave in free agency? All that's possible. Like, there could be 5 new starters on the O-line next year, and I don't think that's outrageous to say that. So, but first we start with this year, and no matter who's playing quarterback, you better protect him. If not, it doesn't matter who's back there if you can't protect him. And then we talk about the commitment to the run game or the recommitment. That starts up front. And the line is even more important if you don't have your number one back because he's suspended, if that happens. So, you look at Bitonio and Posick and Teller and Conklin, you go, man, those four guys, you can trust them. And I think you can, but they need to stay healthy and they need to show that they're not done at 30 or however old each guy is.
Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about the Browns' defense. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick from the Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Steve Palazzolo, 33rd team. This from the Check the Mic podcast, talking about Myles Garrett, his importance to the Browns.
It's an interesting one because a lot of my arguments are like what I say with A.J. Brown and Tyreek Hill. I say when he showed up, everything changed, right? The offense has been so much better since A.J. Brown joined Philadelphia, since Tyreek Hill joined Miami. You can't necessarily make that same argument with Myles Garrett. It's not like he's always on this elite defense. And what happened 2 years ago when the Browns made their little playoff run or made it to the playoffs, their defensive line became one of the best because they invested in it, because they found Zadarius Smith on the other side, because they had Dalvin Tomlinson. They just had more bodies. And we've been saying for years, Myles Garrett needs some help. So it's a tricky one because I still think he is. He's the most essential non-quarterback. This doesn't mean this guy's carrying the team by himself, but when you give him help, it shows the impact that he has, creating one-on-ones for everyone. I always describe him as putting more strain on offensive tackles and offensive coordinators than any other defensive lineman in the NFL. Maybe Dexter Lawrence is the only other guy because he's doing it from that unique nose tackle alignment. But that's what Garrett does, right? Down to down, have to know where he is, have to get him blocked. And when you do have some pieces on the other side, it does elevate their game quite a bit, like Aaron Donald used to with the Rams.
So, Scott, here's my question, and I'm curious. I would think if you put a really good defensive tackle next to him, that even stresses a offensive line more than a bookend.
Yeah, it's a great debate, and I'm starting to come around to your way of thinking there, Dave. I still love the opposite. The guy flying off the other edge. I just think you get two guys coming off the edge, and they're both meeting at the quarterback. There's nowhere for that guy to go. But if you're on the interior, you get to the quarterback quicker. If everybody slides to Myles' side, then you're going to get one-on-ones. So I think both are incredibly important, and you'd want to have studs at all those spots. But if I had to take one, I think I would agree with you that a dominant interior pass rushing force would help Myles and or benefit more from Myles than even a stud end on the other side.
Yeah, I mean, if Myles is coming and he's forced to step up, and you got a guy that's going to consistently win one-on-ones, you can get a lot, that's the way you win Rookie of the Year, Mason Graham. But here's another thing that as I'm thinking of this. Jim Schwartz has always had a guy that creates havoc from the defensive tackle position. And I had to look him up. It's you've got Ndamukong Suh, Fletcher Cox, Albert Hainsworth was another one. Do you think, if you got Jim Schwartz to, with truth serum, he'd be like, finally, you're giving me guys that can create penetration from the defensive tackle position. Tomlinson couldn't do that, and that kind of wasn't what he was good at.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think Schwartz had some guys in Buffalo, and I didn't get a stop in Buffalo, and he had 4 studs across that line too. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I started thinking about Tomlinson, and he might have been the best guy the Browns could have gotten in that free agency class to bulk up that D-line when Schwartz arrived a couple of years ago. But then you've heard since then Andrew Berry say over and over that it's really difficult to find pass rushing D tackles outside of the draft because teams just don't give up on them. So, or don't give them up, don't make them available. So Tomlinson was available and he had a little bit of that, but he doesn't have the same fear factor that those other guys you mentioned did on the inside. And I think the Browns realize that, and it's not a knock on Tomlinson. That's just not the player he was. And I think by drafting Mike Hall Jr. in the second round and then going and drafting Mason Graham at number 5, it's the Browns admitting, yeah, that's how we're going to have to find this guy. The guy to help Myles on the interior must come near the top of the draft.
How concerned are you about this secondary? I mean, Greg Newsome didn't have a year up to what we expect from him. Martin Emerson had a good year, then down year last year. Our free safety has been a mess. They're hoping undrafted free agent Ronnie Hickman can do something that 2 high-profile free agent signings in John Johnson III and Juan Thornhill couldn't do.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. When I saw that question, I have bigger concerns about safety. Ronnie Hickman, can he be the playmaker you've seen flashes of? Can he stay healthy? Grant Delpit, he's a good player, but he hasn't had the breakout that the Browns expected when they drafted him and then gave him the extension. When you look at a defense that had a league low 4 interceptions last year, how do you not look at the secondary and go, man, make some plays? So I get it. I get that there's concerns. My concerns are more with safety than corner. Denzel Ward's fantastic, obviously. I think Martin Emerson Jr. will bounce back. And I think Greg Newsome II will as well. It'll be interesting to see how they use Emerson and Newsome. Is it Emerson on the outside all the time? Does he take every rep? Or does Newsome kind of be the starter and slides inside? Like, how do they use those guys? Both have uncertain contract situations after this year. Or, I think MJ could then negotiate for a contract, but Newsome's in that 5th year of his rookie deal. So there's some unknowns moving forward, but I like the corner group better than I like the safety group.
Scott Petrak, as always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Scott.
Thanks, David.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. He is the Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle Telegram. Check him out online, brownzone.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report up next. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Ray from Cleveland. 2 things for you. Quinshawn not only caught himself a case, he's going to regret it because Sampson's going to take this chance and become our number 1 back. 2, the rookie linebacker, Schlesinger. He sort of reminds me of like a young Clay Matthews. 3, Garrett Bush said he was disappointed with Grant Delpit. The guy ain't had no help at free safety. You can't do 2 things at once. You want him playing the box or cover the back. All right. I love you, brother. God bless you and the family. Be safe. Be good. Bye.
As always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. So, Pete, we'll get to the second 2 things in a minute, but I want to talk about Junkins and Sampson. I know you wrote an article for the OBR. Browns don't need to rush to sign backfield help. Take us through that and kind of what your thoughts are there.
Well, as far as the running game is concerned, the biggest element is up front. The Browns were not good up front last year on the offensive line. Not only are they trying to get better on that with the hire of Mike Bloomgren, bringing some veterans like Cornelius Lucas and Tevin Jenkins, but they're also redoubling efforts to sort of bring in more size, Harold Fannin to supplement David Njoku. So that's really where the running game's going to start with. They don't have a Nick Chubb guy who can sort of elevate the blocking to a point where he's going to make, a bad lineman good. It's largely taking it back and taking good blocking and making better. So I'm not in a huge hurry from that standpoint because the guys that are out there aren't really going to do much for you. But there are a number of teams out there that have excess guys. And the team that jumps out to me from that standpoint is the Denver Broncos. The Broncos last year rolled with Jaleel McLaughlin, the Youngstown State running back. They drafted Audric Estime out of Notre Dame, who for my money was the number 1 running back in the entire class. And then they signed an undrafted rookie in Blake Watson out of Memphis, who's a really good athlete and caught the ball well. So this year, everybody sort of forecasted that the Broncos, who were not happy with their running game overall, were then going to go take one of the big ones, either Ashton Genty, who obviously went way too early, or that they'd take Omarion Hampton. Those were the two sort of premier options. They took neither one. They instead took a corner/safety in Jahdae Brown out of Texas. But then they came back in the second round and drafted R.J. Harvey, who was basically the same size as Dylan Sampson. And then because, one, his size, and then two, the fact that they didn't make a major investment like a Hampton or a Genty, they went out and signed J.K. Dobbins as a veteran. So right now, I've already listed 5 guys. They can't keep them all unless they get some weird roster gymnastics with injuries. So already, if they have to cut one of those guys, or more likely, I think it would be a player the Browns don't want trade for a guy the Broncos are going to cut anyway type trade. I think there's plenty of time for them to bring in somebody. The Browns scouting department should be able to identify somebody who can handle the concepts the Browns want to run, wide zone, pin and pull, that type of stuff, and be able to hit the ground running. I don't look at it as a thing where you need a huge timeline to sort of get them ready to go and get them productive.
So relative to Schlesinger, are you intrigued by him? Again, 1-year starter concerns me, but man, he was productive and did a lot in that year, and he is bigger than I thought he would be.
Yeah, that's a common theme I hear with him. People are estimating he was like really 220, and then you find out, no, he's actually 240. Runs around really, really well. I like the path he sort of took to get where he got. Yes, he's a 1-year starter. He got there the hard way, walk on, had to earn it with special teams and gain trust that way. He's really smart. I think the concern with him is sort of taking on contact a little bit. But to me, the reason I really like what Carson Schlesinger can sort of be for the Browns is they find a guy who doesn't take on contact super, super well. Obviously, they'd like him to get better at it. But they're putting him behind a defensive line where they are trying to cause as much havoc as possible. And the result could be a situation where Schlesinger gets to just reap the rewards. In some ways, they are going to ask him to do things JOK did, except he's much bigger. Because if you go back to his tape at UCLA and the production and everything, he made a ton of plays behind the line of scrimmage. And then he's just a big body. So if he's dropping into coverage, he's just hard to throw around. So I think that's the other advantage he has. And I think he's going to get every opportunity. And then the way the Browns cross-train, it's going to be both at Will and at Mike. Eventually, I think they want him to be the Mike. It's just a question of how long it's going to take for him to earn the trust of Jim Schwartz.
So safety spot, free safety has been, it's been a disaster the last, John Johnson, Juan Thornhill, you put money and it didn't work. But Grant Delpit, he's had flashes, but he's not as, the consistency, I would say. I want to know what I'm getting, and I don't often know what I'm getting from Grant Delpit.
The way I sort of describe Grant Delpit is I think he's had 3 great half seasons. And then the other half of the season, either injury or inconsistency or some other things have gotten in the way. But Grant Delpit is a really, really talented player. They ask him to man up tight ends, and there are games where he has erased guys like Mark Andrews from the Ravens and some of these other guys and helped the Browns win games, and gets very little credit for it because it's not a box score statistic to just shut some of these guys down. And the Browns are, in the habit of playing consistent talent in the AFC North at that element. He can also play in the box as an extra linebacker, does a really good job there. And then he can do some other things like slot. He can play the blitz. And yes, he can play free, but because he does all these other things, they put such a high premium on it, and I understand why, that it sort of doesn't allow him to sort of be a ball hawking playmaker like he was at LSU. They ask him to do a lot. I do think, getting help at free safety, and I think they're going to give Ronnie Hickman every chance to win that job there, would help. I would like to see, nothing would make me happier than Grant Delpit to put together one truly whole great season, because I think if he did that, he would sort of really rise on the rankings of sort of safety. And even as he is, he's made a Pro Bowl, and he's sort of reviewed as sort of right around the top 10 in safety range.
Yeah, and you know what? You point out the versatility, and that's there's value added to that without question. This is from Pro Football and Sports Network. They rank one potential AFC breakout player for each team. For the Browns, they say Mike Hall Jr., who had his rookie season cut short with issues legally. Then he got hurt. What about the group of these defensive tackles that have added? We'll throw Hall into this group. So it's Hall, Mason Graham, and Malik Collins. Do they move the needle on this defensive line, do you think, at all for you?
Absolutely. And I would throw Jawan Briggs in there as well. You mentioned Mike Hall's season was sort of cut short, but, the issue with Hall coming out of college at 20 years old is you're sitting there going, how is he going to hold up against NFL strength? And he came in and played the run better than I thought he would. And I've seen him play, dating back to high school for 3 years. He was way better in that aspect in a lot of ways. In fact, the Browns' run defense improved with Hall in the field. He's got a ton of ability as a pass rusher. And then, to me, if you're sitting there and you're looking at last year's draft and you start sitting there frustrated with like Zach Sinter because he was injured or stuff, Jawan Briggs, after he was on the practice squad, after he came back and changed numbers, was a new man and was really impressive down the stretch. So you take those two guys and you're sitting there and you go, this is a nice little group foundation. You add Malik Collins, who it's just very strange to me because he's a huge acquisition that hasn't got a whole lot of attention. Some of that is he was released by the San Francisco 49ers, so there's sort of an unsexy quality to picking up another guy that was released. And then he wasn't at OTAs or anything because he's one of those guys who does his own thing. But he was second on the 49ers in pressures on a team that was loaded with talent and expectations. He had 45 pressures. The number 2 guy on the Browns last year was Dalvin Tomlinson with 36. If he can give another 45 pressures, the Browns are going to sign up for that immediately. And then you add in Mason Graham, who's an excellent player as a prospect, and he can play the nose, he can rush. They expect big things from him. And then the guy I wouldn't forget from that is Shelby Harris. And I know he's getting up there at 34 years old, but like for a guy who they basically gave practically nothing for, he's been 2 years of excellent veteran presence as a 3-tech. That group's really talented. And I really like Jacques Césaire as a position coach. The expectations are high for that. There's going to be a lot of pressure on that group to deliver in a big way this year.
And if a lot of people don't look at this, but Jim Schwartz's defense usually has a stud defensive tackle that he hasn't had. Albert Hainsworth, Fletcher Cox, Ndamukong Suh. And I'm not saying one of these guys is going to do that, but a guy that gets upfield and creates havoc in the middle kind of sets up what Jim Schwartz wants to do.
Right. I think Dalvin Tomlinson was a terrific player, but he was always sort of miscast for what Jim Schwartz wants to do. They had to get a guy. They took runs at Javon Hargrave and Draymond Jones, and thankfully they got neither one ultimately because those guys did not live up to the money they got paid. Dalvin Tomlinson was just rock solid. He's not a guy who's going to get up the field, save for the Steelers' snow game where he had 10 pressures. That's just not what he is. So, you move on from him and you get, 4 or 5 guys that fit exactly what Jim Schwartz wants. If Mason Graham turns into Ndamukong Suh, everybody's going to be really happy with that. If you can get Mike Hall to be Fletcher Cox, nobody's going to turn that down. But just the sheer number of guys, if they can get a superstar, great. But they just need solid contributions where it feels like wave after wave of guys who are consistently keeping up the pressure on both the run and the pass.
Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Joe Thomas will give us his thoughts on the Browns quarterback situation. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. Ohio lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE with Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Hall of Fame offensive lineman Joe Thomas. His thoughts on how the Browns will handle Joe Flacco versus the younger quarterbacks in this quarterback competition.
I've been in that situation quite a few times during my career where you've got a veteran quarterback who you feel pretty comfortable with, at least being able to manage the team and get you guys into the right plays, throw the ball to the right receiver. And certainly Flacco, I think, is that and more, and I think he can win a lot of games for the Browns. But I think the best strategy is you give him the keys and say, hey, this is your team, Joe. And you don't ever look back. You don't ever look in any other direction. But obviously, as the season goes along, you're evaluating every throw he makes. And you're also watching the young guys in practice, and you're trying to figure out how ready can they be. And then depending on how the team is playing, how everybody's meshing, how these young receivers are coming along, because I think they got one of the better receiving groups that we've seen in Cleveland in a while. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy had a little bit of a breakout year last year. Cedric Tillman's playing better. You got Deontay Johnson this year. David Njoku's still there at tight end. So you got some good pass catchers, some good weapons. They're going to lean, I think, a little bit more on the run game, no matter what happens with Quinshon Judkins. And so this is a team on offense that has a lot of good young players, and it's a matter of how are they meshing, how are they playing, are they able to produce points and numbers, and if they do hit a little bit of a skid and maybe they're starting to be on the outside looking into the playoff hunt, it's going to be, I think, really important for the future for next year to start saying, okay, we need to play one of these young quarterbacks.
Pete, I hear that all the time. You get a really good idea, not a complete picture. Day in and day out, you're going to know what these quarterbacks are if one of them can elevate to that just by seeing how they absorb what you want them to do, how they practice. Those are the things that they're going to pay attention to. But I understand the thought behind, if it's Joe Flacco's team, you got to say it's Joe Flacco's team or Kenny Pickett's team.
Yeah, there's two elements here. I think Joe Thomas is largely right. The one thing he sort of leaves out, which I think a lot of people sort of forget, yeah, the quarterback position is really important, but it's not just about the quarterback. It's about the guys who are going to catch the ball. And as we watched last year, Jerry Jeudy took off when Jameis Winston entered the lineup, and that is something that is to be considered. Joe Flacco, whatever flaws he has, he's going to give receivers chances. And certainly Jerry Jeudy, they want him to have another great year. David Njoku, those are guys that they're counting on to be productive. But they need Cedric Tillman to get passes he can make plays on. They need Harold Fannin to be able to count on the quarterback to get him the ball in the right spots. Jamari Thrash, these are all guys they're looking at. So, yeah, the quarterback's really important, but that doesn't help you, one, win games, or two, develop the other guys on the team if you're just throwing a quarterback out there and he can't do it and you're sort of hindering everybody else. I think there's a larger element to it than just can they figure out what the quarterback is. And to your point, which I cannot hammer home enough, just because we don't see it on Sundays doesn't mean that the team doesn't know what they have in a quarterback. They're there with the practices, meetings, they're with these guys for months. We treat it too often like there's this random element where we just don't know until it happens. They've got a really good idea, and if they're not out there, there's a good reason for it for them usually in these scenarios.
Yeah, and I'd take it even a step further. If they don't know what they have based on practice, we got bigger problems than that. The coaches should know based on how this guy prepares. Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, his read of Dylan Gabriel's progress.
There were reports from NFL Network that the Browns threw a lot on Dylan Gabriel's plate, and the reasoning is that Andrew, in an ideal world, would like this kid to win the job in training camp.
I think
Would you agree with that?
No, I think that's stretching it. I think, if you look at our quarterback tracker, he had more pass attempts than anyone by about 20, Gabriel did. They exposed him to the number one defense. They gave him things. His numbers weren't as great as Shadour's because they were giving him more complicated
Tony,
stuff.
I will not get caught up in Shador's numbers.
Yeah. But that all of that attests to the point that they are intrigued by Dylan Gabriel. They think from the neck up, he is a number one pick.
You know, Pete, it's interesting. I'm curious. We're not even going to know in training camp if his size, because he's under 6 foot, if that's going to be a hindrance. We won't know that probably until you see him in a regular season game, because even preseason games are kind of vanilla defenses, and you just can't get, you can get a sense, but you can't really tell.
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, you'll try to sort of map out where he's completing passes and if he's able to hit things over the middle of the field. But overall, one, let's be clear, the Browns are desperately hoping one of these rookies they don't care which one, can come in and seize the job. If that happens, they're in a great position. It completely changes the fortunes of the franchise. But for Dylan Gabriel's part, if you watched him on tape, the thing that stood out to me was he always had answers. Blitzes, different defenses, everything was throwing at him. He always knew where to go with the ball. He always protected the ball reasonably well, got the ball out on time, and he was never fooled. And that is very appealing to any NFL team, but certainly the Browns, a team that's trying to protect the ball better, that wants to be able to operate on time, play on, in front of the sticks, those type of things. And, from the moment he was drafted as high as he was, my immediate sort of reaction was, I thought Kevin Stefanski saw a left-handed Case Keenum with him, who he had success with, had one deep playoff run with, and if they can get that in the third round, they will sign up and do it. But I think they've got a long way to go with that. And yeah, he's going to get opportunities, because if he's able to process the offense at a high level, if he's able to read defense as well, he's going to earn the opportunity to do it. But at the end of the day, he still has to make the plays. He has to make the offense perform at a level which is going to make them comfortable. And I think that's going to take a good bit of time, especially if he's trying to unseat a guy like Flacco, who has proven with the Browns, which I think is a huge key, that they can move the ball and score points.
So we talked briefly, we kind of skirted around the Quinshon Judkins thing. So Judkins dealing with legal issues. It's the third year in a row one of the draft picks is dealing with it. It was Perion Winfrey, then it was Mike Hall last year, Quinshon Judkins. You throw in Devin Bush, who I initially forgot about. You've written an article that eventually players misbehaving and those kind of issues catch up with a head coach and a GM. Take us through that and kind of the thought behind it.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is you need players to win. And I don't care what level of football you're talking about or, reasons for why you don't have your players, but eventually, the people are going to just count those as excuses. And I don't blame the front office for Quinshon Judkins screwing up, but they're going to pay the price if he's out, a month or longer, and they ultimately lose games as a result of that. And at some point, you keep doing this over and over again, those losses are going to add up. And that's going to be what drives you out. Now, Quinshon Judkins could theoretically be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It certainly won't be the reason they lose their job. It's going to be wins and losses. But whether it's him or Hall or any of these other issues, if you don't have them on the field and you're losing games, then at some point that bill is going to come due, and they're going to make a change, and then they will have an easy pivot to say, we want to clean up our act and all this other stuff and get people sort of rallied behind that. But the bottom line is the NFL doesn't care. They are not going to feel bad for you because a player screwed up who shouldn't. This shouldn't be a high bar to clear. And then win games or don't. And ultimately, I like Evan Stefanski and Andrew Berry, but, at some point it's going to be indefensible and people are going to move on.
All right. Before I let you go, training camp gets underway full speed in a couple of days. What are you paying close attention to? What would be good signs? What would be red flags, things that really concern you early in camp?
Well, I mean, the early things that should happen is the defense should be ahead. They should be good. They have more talent. They have more consistency. Yes, they change over some players, but they know what they're doing system-wise. That should be good. The thing I'm hoping we see is that Mike Bloomgren is working, that the change back to however you want to, go back to the running game is producing results. The Judkins element is unfortunate, but ultimately those guys up front have to be able to get to the right spots, move people off the ball. And if the Browns can't do that, they cannot just outscore teams. They cannot get behind the sticks and try to win that way. They have to be able to stay on schedule, shorten games. And I've said this before, if they're going to be successful, however you want to sort of count that, it's going to be ripping off the Steelers' identity of the past several years, mistake-free football, short games, great defense, and just be in it long enough to win it late. And that's sort of where this team has to go.
Yeah, if you're hearing veterans unsolicited talk about one or the other of the rookie quarterbacks, that's usually a pretty good sign too early.
I agree. I mean, we'll be very curious to if I don't know how much we're going to hear in terms of opinions from the young guys, especially skill guys. But if David Njoku's talking up the rookies, or Jerry Jeudy's talking up these young signal callers, that's good. But yeah, if you hear from the linemen, if you hear from those veteran linemen, that would be an excellent indication of how good they feel about it, because that not only means they're moving the offense, that means the offensive line is being put in position to succeed in terms of their pass protection. They're not doing stupid stuff that's going to cause sacks and do these other things that's ultimately going to result in either turnovers or taking sacks and punting the ball.
Pete Smith, Orange and Brown Report. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Great stuff as always. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
Pete Smith, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff. He writes for the Orange and Brown Report. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.